Hello students. In last lecture, we are discussed about the different type of pollinations, right? Means in self pollination and cross pollination, we have three types of pollination. That is, we can say autogamy, heteronogamy, and our genogamy. Also, I tell you about the different adaptation for self pollination and for cross pollination. Okay. Today, now we are going to discuss about the agent of pollinations. When we consider the agent of pollination, now we have two types of pollinations, either abiotic or they may be biotic, right? So first I tell you some about the agents, then we will start this point, right? Here, agents of pollination. Agent of pollination. Now here, first we classified these agents into two parts on the basis of they are living or non-living, right? That means they may be abiotic, means non-livings. Abiotic means we have two types of agents. One is our air, another one is our water, right? Pollination which occurs through air, this one is called anemophily, and pollination which occurs through water, this one is called hydrophily, right? Second, this is the first one, and second we have another one is zoophily, that means biotic pollinating agent. Biotic pollination means here we can say, because here animals are involved, so for animals we can say them zoophily. Zoophily, right? In zoophily, different animals means different type of pollination is there, because they are specific. Mostly it is pollinated by means of insects, right? Here first is our insect. If insects are involved, then they are called as entomophily. Second, we have if insect, mostly 80% pollination occurs to insects, that is called entomophily. Second is our if birds are involved, like our honey bird or hummingbird, right? As in our bignonia, it is hummingbird, right? So these are called as ornithophily. Third one is our if snails, like garden snail, limnia, is involved in pollination, grass, right? So that is if snails are involved, they are called as malacophily, right? Third is our again malacophily. Fourth, if suppose that suppose that bats are involved, bats like in banana, right? Bats are involved, then it is called as chiropterophily. Chiropterophily, right? And if here snakes, sometime what happens, like in santalum woods, santalum trees, right? In a common name we said them is santalum. Santalum is snakes are involved. If snakes are involved, then it is also called as ophiophily. Right? Ophiophily. If ants are involved, ants, then this is called myrmecophily. Means different animals means different phily. Phily means what? Pollination. Phily means pollination. Air means anemophily. Water means hydrophily. Mostly air, in abiotic, mostly anemophily is present. This is only 30 monocot genera is involved in hydrophily. Insect 80%. It is pollination is through is by means of insects only. Insect, bird, snail, bat, snake, right, or ant. So these are different type of zoophily on the base of their pollinating agent, right? Okay, what is given in our NCERT? We will discuss it, right, in NCERT. Now look here, agents of pollination. Plant uses two abiotic. Two, already I tell you, two abiotic means what? Either it is wind means air, or it is water, right? Mostly air is present. So plants use two abiotic. Which one? Two abiotic. Wind and water. Wind means what? Wind means what? Anemophily. And water means what? It is hydrophily. Right? And one biotic. Biotic animals. Biotic means zoophily. For biotic, we use zoophily. Agent to achieve pollination. Right? Majority of plant use biotic agents for pollination. Mostly they use, right? In biotic, they use insect. Means 80% pollination is occurs through insect. Only a small proportion of plant use a biotic agent. Small proportion means what? Wind means it is monocots, right? And hydrophily is very less, right? 30% genera is involved. Pollen grain coming in contact with the stigma is chance factor in case of both and water pollination. Because they are abiotic, it is a chance factor, right? They can reach up to the stigma, or they cannot be reached to the stigma, right? That's why here enormous number of pollen grains are formed. To compensate for these uncertainties and associated loss of pollen grain, the flower produce enormous amount of pollen, right? When compared to the number of ovules available for pollination. Very less numbers of ovules are there, but enormous number of pollen grains are formed because it is by chance pollination. That means what here? That is uncertainty is there and loss of pollen grain is more. Chance for loss of pollen grain is maximum here, right? Okay, it is for. Now second is given here. Pollination wise by wind is very common in abiotic pollinations. It is very common in abiotic pollinations, right? Wind is very common. Wind pollination also requires that pollen grain are now here because it is wind pollination. So they are non-sticky. They may be light, so that they can blown in the air, right? Non-sticky, so that they can be transported in wind currents, right? They often possess well exposed stamens. Well, mostly they have this type of stamens are there. Versatile, right? Fixed stamen are there. So they have versatile fixed stamen are there, so that the pollen are easily dispersed into the wide current, right? And large, often feathery stigma. Second, their stigma is feathery, so that the pollen grain which is come with the wind, they are trapped in this feathery stigma to easily trap airborne pollen grains, right? Wind pollinated flowers often have a single ovule. That is very important. How many ovules are there? Single ovule, right? In each ovary, and a numerous flower packed into an inflorescence, we say, like as for example in example is given here, spathy type, right? These are female flowers and these are stigmas, right? Now here a familiar example is the corn cob. The tassels, root, that is hair-like processes which you see are nothing but the stigma and style which wave in the wind to trap the pollen grain. They are in compact clusters, right? And they all move in the air, so that the pollen grain which come with the wind, they are trapped in the stigma styles. Wind pollination is quite common in grasses. Grasses family means in our Poaceae family. This family is also in, that means it is present in our syllabus, NEET syllabus. It is not present in our NCERT, but it is in our NEET syllabus, right? Poaceae family means grass family. It is very common in grass family, pollination by wind. Second, what you read here? Here we understand that for wind pollination, the pollen grain should be non-sticky and light, right? Second, their anther is versatile fixed anther, right? So that the pollen grains are easily dispersed. Second thing is also here, they have only a single ovule in each carpel, in each ovary, right? And numerous flowers are packed, right? Packed into an inflorescence. Example is given for corn, right? Maize. X figure is also given here. Second is given here. Pollination by water is quite rare in flowering plants, right? Quite rare in flowering plant. Water means what? Hydrophily. Hydrophily is very quite. It is rare in plant kingdom, flowering plants. In flowering plants only. We cannot. Flowering plant means what? Only in angiosperm, because gymnosperm. Okay, gymnosperm only anemophily is there. Means air pollination is there. But the bryophyte, pteridophyte. When we consider the bryophyte and pteridophytes, so they need water for transportation of male gametes, anthrozoids, right? So here it is given flowering plant, rare in flowering plants, right? And limited to about 30 genera. How many genera are there? Only 30 genus, right? Mostly they are monocotyledons, right? Because in flowering plant we have two classes, monocotyledon and dicotyledons. So mostly they are monocotyledons, and these 30 genera, they also belongs to monocotyledons, right? As against this, you would recall what is given here, 30 genera. Genera means what? Genus. Water is a regular mode of transport of male gamete among the lower plant groups. I already tell you, lower plant group means what? As algae, bryophyte and pteridophytes. They are very important because in the absence of water, we can say pollination cannot occur in that lower plants, bryophyte, algae or pteridophytes. This is not a pollination, okay, but we can say transportation of male gamete from that is Antheridia to Archaea, right? It is believed, particularly for some bryophytes and pteridophytes, that is also it is believed. Bryophyte and pteridophyte, why their distribution is limited? Due to this region. This region means hydrophily region. That their distribution is limited because of the need of water for the transportation of male gamete for fertilization. For the transportation of male gamete for fertilization, water is essential in both classes, right? Which one? That is our pteridophyte and bryophyte, right? Some examples of water pollinated plants are, now here if water pollination is there, water pollination means it is also two types. Two types is, one is called epihydrophily and another one is called hypohydrophily, right? Epihydrophily means what? Epi means above. Above means it occurs at the surface of water, and hypo means what? Below. It occurs below the surface of water. That means what? Inside the water, right? And that is given here also. Or Vallisneria. Vallisneria, it is an example of epihydrophily. Epihydrophily, right? Means it occurs at the surface of water. Surface of water. Only this pollination occurs at the surface of water. All the other things, all the other activities, they happens inside the water. This Vallisneria, it is a dioecious plant. Vallisneria, this one is a dioecious plant, and I know, I understand you know what is a dioecious. Dioecious means male and female both plants are different, right? Female plant means what? Here that is a female plant stigma is coiled, right? First it is inside the water, but at maturation it become uncoiled, and this stigma it reach up to the surface of the soil or water. And in case of anther that is also present inside the water, right? By bursting it through the that is male flower or pollen grain at the surface, right? And from surface this passively, because it is non-motile pollen grain, it is passively floating and reach up to the female flower, right? Hydrilla. Hydrilla is example of hypohydrophily. Hypohydrophily. Hypo means what? Below. Hydro means what? Water. Below water means inside the water, right? There it is inside. Not only hydrilla is there. Hydrilla. Another one is our Zoostera. I already tell you, Zoostera means it has the longest pollen grain, ribbon-like pollen grain, and these pollen grains which are present inside the water, they have no exine. They have, in place of exine, they have a mucilage layer. They have a mucilage layer which protect them from wetting. Mucilage layer, right, which protect them from wetting, right? So this is the specific feature of pollen grains in case of hydrophily, or we can say hypohydrophily, right, which grow in fresh water and several marine dwellers. So these both are example of fresh water, right? Some example are given for marine water. Several marine sea grasses. Sea grasses example for Zoostera, already right here, right? Zoostera, not all aquatic. Okay, Zoostera. This is also hypohydrophily, example of hypohydrophily, right? All aquatic plants use water for pollination. That is not correct. All aquatic plants use water for pollination. This one is not correct. In a majority of aquatic plants, such as water hyacinth and water lily, the flowers emerge above the level of water and are pollinated by insects or by wind. Means either they are pollinated by anemophily or by entomophily, right? As for example here, water lily means what? Through wind, anemophily, and water hyacinth means it is through insect, right? Because water hyacinth means it is attractive flowers are there. As in most of the land plants, right? In Vallisneria, the female flower reaches the surface of water by the long stalk, and the male flower or pollen grain are released onto the surface of water, and they are carried passively by water currents, as I already tell you, right? Some of them eventually reach to the female flower and the stigmas. And in other group of water pollinated flowers, this is for Vallisneria. Vallisneria, which type of water pollination is there? It is epihydrophily, because here what happens, at the surface of water, pollen grains are released, and these pollen grains, they come and reach to the stigma of that is female flower, right? And this Vallisneria means dioecious plant. Okay, they are carried water current. Okay, some of the eventually reach the female flower and the stigma. In another group of water pollinated plants such as sea grasses. Sea grasses means what? Like in Zoostera. Female flower remains submerged. That I tell you, it is example, that is, it is telling about the hypohydrophily, right? In this case, what happens? In this case, Vallisneria, it is epihydrophily. Epihydrophily. I tell you, it is on the surface. But here, sea grasses. Sea grasses means hypo, and this is given here, hydrophily, right? Remains submerged in the water, and the pollen grains are released inside the water, not at the surface of water. Pollen grains in many such species are long ribbon-like, and they are carried passively inside the water, right? Passively inside the water. As for example, I tell ribbon-like longest pollen grain belongs to Zoostera, right, which is a marine seagrass, right? Some of them reach to stigma and achieve pollination. In most of the water pollinated species, pollen grains are protected from wetting by mucilage covering. It is given here by mucilage covering. In these, like here, Zoostera, here exine is absent, right? Exine is absent. In place of exine, they have mucilaginous coverings, right? both wind and water pollinated flowers are not very colorful because they need not to attract the insects or animals. That's why they are not very colorful and do not produce nectar. Nectar means it is a floral reward. They need not to give any reward to water or wind, right? What would be the reason for this? I will tell you, because they need not to attract insects or animals for pollination. That's why they are not colorful and also they have no floral rewards. Okay. Majority of flowering plants uses a range of animals as pollinating agent. Here, this figure is given here. These are Vallisneria plant, right? This is the female flower. It reaches up to the surface of water, right? And this is the male flower, which is released inside the water, but it is because blasting is there, so it comes at the surface, and here it rounds about, and then after some time it reaches up to the stigma and pollination occurs, right? This is the male flower which is come to the surface, right? And these are the pollen grains, right? Majority of flowering plants uses a range of animals as pollinating agent. As for example, bees, butterflies, flies, beetles, wasp, ant, moth, bird, sunbird or hummingbird, right? And bats are common pollinating agents. Already I tell you, bees, butterflies, flies, beetles, wasps or moths, they comes into the entomophily because they are insects. Ant means myrmecophily, birds means ornithophily, snakes means ophiophily, as for example in santalum, right? In Hindi it is called chandan, right? And bat is even here. Yes, bats means what? Chiropterophily. Sunbird and hummingbird means what? It is ornithophily, right? Are the common pollinating agents. Among the animal, insects, particularly bees, right? Insects means in entomophily, particularly bees means 80% of entomophily occurs to bees, are the dominant biotic pollinating agents. Each larger animal, such as some primates, as for example lemur, arboreal tree dwelling. Arboreal means what? Animals who lives on trees. They are called arboreal, right? Like squirrels, rodents. Example, rodents is even, rodents means different, rodents means, in rodents, rodentia, it is a order in mammal kingdom in which rat, mouse or squirrels they come, right? The squirrels or even reptiles, that is gecko lizard or garden lizard, have also been reported as pollinator in some species, because when they move from one branch to another branch, so they have some pollen gain in their body, and when they come, that means they come in the contact of another flower, it is pollinated, right? That means pollen gain reach up to the next stigma. Often flowers of animals pollinated plant are specifically adapted for particular species of animals. There are some specific, that is some adaptations also present for a specific species, right? We will discuss about this one. Some examples we will get. Majority of insect pollinated flowers are large, colorful, fragrant, they have smell and rich in nectar, right? Here 4 things is given. What? They are large, colorful, for attract the insects, fragrant, and they have rich nectar is there. Nectar means they have floral reward, right? To eat the nectar, the insect will come. When the flowers are small, if flowers is small, so they are present in cluster, right? So flowers are small, they are present in cluster into an inflorescence to make them conspicuous, right? Animals are attracted to flower by color or by fragrance. These 2 things for attraction, that is color or fragrance. That is what here, if biotic pollinator agents are there or zoophily is there, all the flower which have zoophily, they are colorful, right? They have also fragrant, they have also nectar or by fragrance. The flowers pollinated by flies and beetles, they secrete foul odors, right? Foul odor, because these flies and beetles, they attract toward the foul odors, right? Attract to these animals. To sustain animals, which is the flower have to provide reward. They also provide them rewards, right? That is called flora rewards. And these rewards are nectar and pollen grain. So nectar and pollen grain, they are the main rewards. Nectar and pollen grain are the usual floral rewards, right? Some other facility also they provide them. As for example, here it is given. For harvesting, here is usually for harvesting the rewards from the flower, the animal visitor comes in contact with the anthers and the stigma. When they come with the anthers, they took pollen grain, and when they visit to a stigma, so they pollinate this pollen grain. The body of animal gets a coating of pollen grain, which are generally sticky. Look here, the pollen grain which are present, which are pollinated by biotic components, they are sticky, right? Anemophily means it is non-sticky. Zoophily means they are sticky. In animal pollinated flowers, when the animal carrying pollen on its body come in contact with the stigma, it brings about the pollination. That is a simple process, right? Some other is given also. In some species of floral reward is providing in safe place to lay eggs. Special facility they give them, and that means here they lay eggs. They are totally dependent upon the flower for, and flower pollination, it is also dependent upon the animal. That means here they shows commensalism, right? And you know commensalism is both are in benefits. An example is that the tallest flower of Amorphophallus. It is the tallest flower, Amorphophallus. The flower itself is about 6 feet in height, right? It is the tallest Amorphophallus, right? In Amorphophallus, what happens? The animal means birds or this yucca plant, it lays egg in the Amorphophallus, right? And what happens then? Then these larvae, they released out from this egg, and when this meant, that means what? If they lay eggs, means pollination occurs, right? A similar relationship exists between a species of moth and this moth. What is the name of this moth? This name of this moth is Pronuba, right? Yucca Sela moth. Pronuba yucca Sela moth, right? Moth and the plant of yucca, where both species, moth and the yucca, they are interdependent, means both are dependent to one another, right? Why? Because they cannot complete their life cycle in the absence of one. That is given here also. Cannot complete their life cycle without each other. They also shows commensalism. The moth deposits its eggs into the locule of ovary, and the flower in turn get pollinated by moth. So both are compulsory for complete the life cycle, right? The larvae of the moth come out of the egg as the seed start developing. Larvae comes out, larvae get nourishment from these seeds, and because it is also pollinated, now seeds are developing, right? Okay, next point is given. Why don't you observe some flower? It is given for some practical. Practical means you can observe these things in your lawn, in your garden, right? Or in your fields. If you have a if you cultivate crops, then you can see also this one. Why don't you observe some flowers of the flowering plant or any other available to you? Cucumber means, okay, you know, Cucurbitaceae family. Mango, people, coriander, papaya, onion, lobia, cotton, tobacco, rose, lemon, eucalyptus, banana. Many things even here. Cucumber means entomophily, mango means it is myrmecophily, right? People means also it is a moth, right? Means it is not a moth, it is a wasp. People, because here hypothedium type of inflorescence is there, moth is there. Coriander, entomophily, papaya. Papaya means what? Papaya means it is through ants, right? Onion, entomophily, lobia, entomophily, cotton, entomophily, tobacco, entomophily. Rose means also entomophily. Lemon, citrus, maybe myrmecophily or entomophily. Eucalyptus, banana means bats, right? Bat or maybe some bird, right? In some cases, it is also observed in banana. Ants are also involved, right? Try to find out which animal visit them and whether they could be pollinators. I will tell you in cucumber what means. Entomophily means insects come, flies come, right? Mango means what? Myrmecophily means what? Ants. Responsible are ants. People, a wasp is there. Coriander, papaya means it is anemophily. Papaya means anemophily is there. And sometimes some that is insects are also coming here, but mostly it is through anemophily. Coriander means it is because coriander it is umbel. Inflorescence is umbel, right? Here it is entomophily. Onion also entomophily. Lobia, cotton, tobacco, rose, entomophily. Lemon, eucalyptus, maybe entomo or ant, myrmecophily. Banana, maybe bat, right? Means xeropterophily or maybe ant. Try to find out which animal visit them and whether they could be pollinators. So all the times the insects or the animals which come to them, they are not a pollinators, right? They are not a pollinators. You will have to patiently observe the flower over a few days and at different times of the day. You could also try to see whether there is any correlation in the characteristics of a flower to the animal that visit it. In some cases, like in people, we understand only wasp can enter into the inflorescence, because in people we know in ficus species they have a special inflorescence, and this inflorescence is called hypanthodium, right? This is cup-like structure. Only wasp is there, right? Specific only for wasp, right? And mango also only ants they can reach there, because this is very small flowers are there. Another, right? Carefully observe if any of the visitor come in contact with the anther and the stigma, as only such visitor can bring about pollinations. Many insects may consume pollen or nectar without bringing about pollination. They are not a pollinators, but they come, they eat the nectars, right? And these are called as robbers. Such floral visitors are referred as pollen or nectar robbers. Because they get reward without doing any work, right? So they come for eating the nectar, and nectar is produced for only pollinators. That's why they are called pollen or nectar robbers. You may or may not be able to identify the pollinators, but you will surely enjoy your first. Okay, outbreeding devices. Already I tell you about the outbreeding devices, right? We are discussing about devices means what? Adaptation for cross pollination. What adaptations are present for cross pollination, right? Okay, before this one, I tell you here it is two types: epihydrophily and hypohydrophily, right? Surface of the water and it is inside the water. Example in NCERT given Vallisneria, and this example is Zoostera. Another example is Hydrilla. It is given in NCERT, so I write here, right? Okay. Now come to the some special type of pollinations, right? First here is lever mechanism. Lever mechanism. Lever mechanism is, it is present in bilabiate flowers. As for example in Labiate. Bilabiate flower. Bilabiate means what? Two leaves are present. Bilabiate family. Labiate family means what? As for example, salvia. Salvia. Here salvia. What happens here? Here this flower is two laps, one and another one. This is a flower, right? And this side it is anther or stigma. Suppose that this is anther. So insect, when insect come to this side, what happens? Suppose that this is the insect, right? What happens when it sit on the lower lip? So this anther, it is also, that is what pulls out now, and it pulls down. That means the pollen grain which is present here, they come and, that means they come and sticks on the back of the insect, and when it come to the another flower, these flower are bisexual flower, but here progeny is there. Now this is our stigma. This side it is stigma. This is anther, and this one is stigma. And when this same animal or insect, it come and sit on the another flower, right? So this pollen grain which is present at the upper part of the body, it reach up to the stigma, right? And pollination. This is called a lever mechanism, right? First thing is there, as for example in Salvia bilabiate family. Second, okay, Yucca and Amorphophallus is also given here because they provide site for egg laying. Another example which is given here, it is like a trap door mechanism. Second one is our trap door mechanism. Trap door mechanism is present in which? Hypanthodium. Hypanthodium inflorescence, which is present in fig family. Ficus family, right? Ficus family. Here what happens? Here only a wasp is responsible for pollination. It can enter. That means it is a type, this type of inflorescence is there. These are female flowers and these are male flowers. Male flower, these are female flower. When insect enters this one, right, it have to move and then go away, right? In this pattern, what happens? These anthers come from that side and it brings this anther at the stigmas and then move outside. This is a wasp, this special wasp, right? So pollination occurs through wasp only. In case of ficus family, ficus means what? It may be Ficus babylonicus. It may be Ficus religiosa, means people, banyan, right? In fig, this type of trapdoor mechanism is present. Okay. Another one is our fly trap mechanism. Third one is our fly trap mechanism. It is present in Astrolochia. Here what happens? Now here when insect come, right, it fell down inside the flower. When it fell down inside the flower, it is arrested like a prisoner inside the flower, right? So this one is called fly trap, or this also called as pitfall mechanism, or that is called pitfall flowers, right? We can say here flower in Astrolochia. So this fly trap mechanism is there, means what happens here? When insect come, this suppose that insect is there and this is the flower, right? And when insect come, it drop inside the, this is the insect. It fell down inside the flower and it is totally arrested inside the flower. now a pollination happens. This is a fly trap mechanism in astro. You need only, that means read the example. Lever mechanism in Bilapetii family means Salvia. Trapdoor mechanism, it is present in our ficus species, fig family. Fly trap mechanism, it is present in Aristolochia, right? So these are some examples that is for specific pollination from a specific animals. Okay, and another one is the largest flower, that is Rafflesia. It that means secretes a foul odor. Foul odor is like rotten meat, right? Very bad smell is there. It is a very good red color flower, very large flower is there. It is the largest flower also, and it is the heaviest flower. Means the weight of this flower is near about to 40 kgs, right? And it has a very foul odor, that is like a rotten meat, and it attracts the fleas, right? The fleas, that means fleas are responsible for pollination here, right? Okay. Okay, in bird pollination, some given here bird. When we consider the bird pollination, so we have two types of birds. One is called our like humming. Very small bird is there. Hummingbird or sunbird is there, right? In hummingbird or sunbird, like for example in right, which one? Bignonia. Right? Hummingbird, as for example, Bignonia. This hummingbird is responsible, that is, it is the pollinator agent. Second, we have honeybird. Honeybird, it is responsible for the pollination in which? In our dhak. This is common name, it is not a scientific name, it is a common name of dhak, right? Scientific name is Butea monosperma, it is called. Butea monosperma, right? This honeybird is responsible for this. Bignonia means hummingbird or sunbird, we can say also. Sunbird or hummingbird. As for example in Bignonia, honeybird, as for example in Butea monosperma. At least one example you have to read this one, right? In which bird pollination is given here. Okay. Now bat. Another one is bat pollination. It is also given in our NCERT, but specific examples are not given. Here I only tell you some examples, right, for each pollinator. So bat pollination is called, look here, bird pollination is called as ornithophily. Phily. It is called, okay, ornithophily. And here bat pollination is what? It is called Chiroptero, T-E-R-O, Chiropterophily, right? Mostly because we know bats, they are moving in night, right? Night. These flowers are big flowers. These big flowers are there, right? As for example here Kadamba trees, right? So Kadamba means here that is Kadamba also, banana also. This pollination is through by bats, right? As for example we write here Kadamba. Scientific name of this one is Amphophilus. It is called, 1 minute, I think it is Anthocephalus Kadamba. Anthocephalus Kadamba. Banana also is there. Banana is not common, it is a common name. Kadamba, Hindi it is called Kadam. These flowers are large, attractive, right? And ant means what? Ant means myrmecophily. Example is for ant through ant it is mango. Sometimes it is because small sticky flowers are there. So in case of mango, another one is acacia also. Acacia, Mangophyra means Mangophyra indica, acacia, and some plants of Rubiaceae family. These are some examples, right, which is not in our NCERT, but I tell you here because they may be asked in our exams, right? Okay, come back to the NCERT. Outbreeding devices. Outbreeding devices means these devices, they prevent self-pollination, right? Or we can say these are the devices which improve the cross-pollination. Majority of flowering plant produce hermaphrodite flowers. Hermaphrodite flowers means bisexual flowers, right? And pollen grains are likely to come in contact with the stigma of the same flower very easily, right? Maybe it come. Continued self-pollination results in inbreeding. Now, what is given inbreeding? Inbreeding means depression is there, right? This is called inbreeding depressions, right? Continued self-pollination result in breeding depressions, right? Flowering plant have developed many devices to discourage self-pollination, right? To prevent the inbreeding depression and encourage the cross-pollination. These devices are used to encourage that. That means we can say it is these are the adaptations, right? For cross-pollination. In some species, in last lecture, I tell you all about this one. Here once more, we are going to repeat this one. Pollen released and stigma receptivity are not synchronized. Pollen release and stigma receptivity is not synchronized. Maybe it is called as dichogamy, right? Dichogamy means what? Either pollen grain mature first or stigma mature first. If pollen grain mature first, it is called as protandry, and if stigma mature first, it is called as protogyny, right? The protandry and protogyny process is given here, right? Either the pollen is released before the stigma becomes receptive, right? That is called protandry, right? This or either what is given here, stigma becomes receptive much before the release of pollen, and this one is called as protogyny, G-Y-N-E. Protogyny. Protogyny means what? Gynoecium mature first. In some other species, the anther and stigma are placed at different positions so that the pollen cannot come contact with the stigma of the same flower, right? And this one is called as heterophily, right? Means their length is different. Both of these devices prevent autogamy. They prevent autogamy means they prevent self-pollination. The third device is to prevent inbreeding in self-incompatibility. This is genetic, right? Self-incompatibility. This is a genetic mechanism and prevent self-pollination from the same flower or other flower of the same plant. Means it prevent autogamy as well as getonogamy from fertilizing the ovules by inhibiting the pollen grain or pollen tube growth in the pistil. Means if anther come from the same plant or from the same flower, no pollen tube germination occurs here, right? Due to the presence of some inhibitors. Another device to prevent self-pollination is to production of unisexual flower. Production of unisexual flower means what? Monocliny. It is monocliny means production of, that is bisexual, right? And dicliny, already we read this one, right? Monocliny or dicliny. If both male and female flowers are present on the same plant, such as castor and maize, both are present on the same plant, but they are unisexual flowers, right? That is called monoecious. If a same plant, it contains both type of, means unisexual flowers, male flower and female flower, then this plant is called monoecious, right? It prevents autogamy. Okay, autogamy is not happens here because flowers are different, but not getonogamy. But not getonogamy means from the same flower anther will come, right? That is pollen grain come to the stigma. In several species such as papaya, male and female flowers are present on different plants, and these plant is called dioecious, right? Dioecious. That each plant is either male or female. So this condition prevent both autogamy and getonogamy because flowers are present on different plants, not on the same plant. So no autogamy, no getonogamy is there, right? So autogamy, getonogamy, already we read this one. Autogamy means what? Totally self-pollination, means they are self-pollination genetically as well as functionally, they are self-pollination. Getonogamy, it is genetically self-pollination, but functionally it is a cross-pollination because it needs a pollinator agent, right? And that third is our genogamy. It is genetically as well as functionally cross-pollination, right? Now pollen pistil interaction, right? In pollen pistil interaction, pollination does not guarantee the transfer of the right type of pollen, compatible pollen of the same species at the stigma, right? Compatible means we know here because some plants they show self-incompatibility. So that means here it is even compatible pollen of the same species as the stigma, right? If it is compatible, now the pollen tube germinates, otherwise pollen tube never germinates, right? Here often pollen is of wrong type either from the other species or from the same plant, right? If it is self-incompatible, also land on the stigma? Yes, maybe, because no barrier is there. The pistil has the ability to recognize the pollen whether it is of the right type, that means compatible, or it is of the wrong type, that means incompatible, right? If it is of the right type, means compatible, the pistil accepts the pollen and promotes the post-pollination events. Post-pollination events means what? Germination of pollen tube, right? That here some figures given, that is our pollen tubes, right? Now here figure is given here. Longitudinal section of a flower showing the growth of a pollen tube. Now this you can see here, all these pollen tube, only single pollen tube is formed. If a single pollen tube is formed, that type, it is most common, that is called as monosiphonous, right? Mostly they are monosiphonous, but in case of we have two families, Malvaceae and second one is our Cucurbitaceae. They have polysiphonous, right? And that's polysiphonous means what? More than one germ tube or pollen tube. Right? And monosiphon means only one pollen tube. Do you understand this one? Here what is given? Here central cell, this is the central cell, our central cell. This is the egg nucleus, synergids, right? It is just this side, it is a micro, this one is micropylar end, right? And there, look here, you can see there, this is our pollen tube. Pollen tube. Here vegetative nucleus and male gametes. So here vegetative nucleus is not at that place, it is present at the tip, right? Terminal part. Vegetative nucleus is present at the terminal part. Okay, it is given here, but it is not right. Male gamete, they are just back to the vegetative nucleus, right? Filiform apparatus, which is the characteristics of synergids, they guide the pollen tube, right? And when this pollen tube enters inside this one, what happens? It swells up by end osmosis. Look here, it swells up, swell and burst due to end osmosis. And released its component. Its component means what? Male gamete and vegetative nucleus. Okay, vegetative nucleus, when it releases inside the synergids, it starts degeneration, right? So here when we see two dark spots are there. These are called X bodies, and these X bodies means they are degenerated synergids nucleus and also vegetative nucleus, right? Male gamete, another male gamete is there, right? This male gamete, it comes and it fuses the X cell, and this male gamete, it fuses this secondary nucleus. These are pollen nuclei, right? And these pollen nuclei, when before the fertilization, they fused with each other, right? And forms a secondary nucleus, which is 2n in nature. It is secondary nucleus and also called as definite nucleus, right? And when this male gamete, it fused with the secondary nucleus, it forms primary endosperm nucleus, PEN, right? Leads to fertilization. If the pollen is of wrong type, the pistil rejects pollen by preventing the pollen germination on the stigma. Then pollen, that is, pollen tube is not germinated, or the pollen tube goes in the style, right? The ability of pistil to recognize the pollen followed by its acceptance or the rejection is the result of continuous dialogue between pollen-pistil interaction, right? This dialogue is mediated by chemical components of the pollen interacting with those of the pistil, right? So chemical components here, we know here, for the germination of pollen tube, which chemical is responsible? It is barium and cobalt, right? Boron, sorry, right? It is called boron and calcium, right? So here what happens? Boron, calcium, inositol, sugar complex is formed. Boron, calcium, inositol, sugar complex. It is that is because we know pollen tube growth is chemoreceptive, right? Chemotactic. So it grows toward where the boron, calcium, inositol, sugar complex is there. It is released by the synergids, right? Okay, here. It is only recent year that botanists have been able to identify some of the pollen and pistil components and the interaction leading to the recognition followed by the acceptance or rejections. Why it is important? Because by using these chemicals, they can grow that pollen grains on the stigma, which is incompatible, right? So by adding this chemical, they can grow. Means they can form a different type of seeds, which is genetically different, right? Which is not present in nature. As mentioned earlier, following compatible pollination, the pollen grain germinates on the stigma to produce a pollen tube through one of the germ pore. Already we know that we have two types of pollen, in which one called unique monocolpate and tricolpate, or we can say unicolpate or tricolpate. Some pollen grain it has only one germ pore, some have 3 germ pore, right? It is not a topic for discussion, but here one germ pore means only one pollen tube is germinated, right? 3 germ pore means it is more than one pollen tube is germinated. That is not correct for every time, because in monocots in Gamopetalae, mostly more than one pollen tube is germinated, right? If more than one pollen tube is germinated, it is called polysiphonous. And if only one pollen tube is germinated, it is called monosiphonous. Siphon means what? Tube, right? The content of the pollen grain move into the pollen tube. Pollen tube grows through the tissues of the stigma and style and reaches to the ovary, right? You would recall that in some plant, pollen grains are shed at two-celled condition. 60% of angiosperm or pollen plants, they shed, pollen grains are shed at two-celled stage, 60% angiosperm, a vegetative cell and a generative cell, right? In such plant, the generative cell divides and forms two male gametes during the growth of pollen tube. When pollen tube grows, then what happens? Vegetative nucleus, it is in terminal in position, which it comes to the tip of the pollen tube, and the generative cell, generative nucleus, it divides mitotically and forms primary and secondary male gamete, right? In plant which set in three-celled condition, because it is already three-celled condition, it need not to divide mitotically because it has already two male gametes. Pollen tube carry the two male gametes from the beginning. Pollen tube, after reaching the ovary, enters the ovule through the micropyle and enters one of the synergids through the filiform apparatus, right? Now here entrance of pollen tube is not okay. Maximum it is through micropyle, and this, if enters through micropyle, it is called porogamy, right? If enters through chalaza, it is called chalazogamy, as for example in casuarina. And if it enters, third is our mesogamy. Mesogamy means it enters either through integuments or through funicle, right? Through integument means like Cucurbitaceae family, and funicle means it is a walnut, or we can say Papulus, right? So these three types, that is entry of pollen tube inside the ovule. So three, porogamy, it is most common, right? And here it is given when porogamy is when pollen tube enter through micropyle, right? Through chalaza. Okay, we read here. Many recent studies have shown that filiform apparatus present at the micropylar part of the synergids, right, guides the entry of pollen tube because they produce calcium boron inositol sugar complex, right? All these events from pollen deposition of the stigma until pollen tube enters the ovule are together referred as pollen pistil interaction. To understand pollen pistil interaction means what? Germination of pollen tube and entry. This pollen tube enters into the ovary, right? As pointed out earlier, pollen pistil interaction is a dynamic process involving pollen recognition, right, followed by the promotion or inhibition of the pollen, right? The knowledge gained in this area would help the plant breeder in manipulating the pollen pistil interaction, right? For why? To giving a specific hybrid interaction. Even in incompatible pollination, I already tell you they use chemical for the growth of pollen tube to get a desired hybrids. That is the importance of the study of pollen pistil interaction, right? You can easily study pollen germination by dusting some pollen from flower such as pea, chickpea, crocolaria, balsam, vinca on a glass slide containing a drop of sugar solution. It is about 10%. 10% sugar solution is what? 10 drop of water and one drop of sugar, right? That is called 10%. After about 15 to 30 minutes, when we observe this slide under microscope, low power lens microscope, means it is a compound microscope, right? We need to use compound microscope. We are likely to see the pollen tube coming out of the pollen grain. They absorb this sugar solution and develop. A breeder is interested in crossing different species or often genera to combine desirable characters to produce commercially superior varieties. That is artificial hybridization. Already we will read this one next chapter. That is our which one next unit, that is hybridization, right? Mendel is there. Artificial hybridization is one of the major approach of crop improvement program hybridization, right? In such crossing experiment, it is important to make sure that only the desired pollen grains are used for pollination and the stigma is protected from contamination, right, from unwanted pollen. And this is achieved by two process. First is emasculation. Emasculation is what? To remove the pollen grains, unwanted pollen grains, right? Second is bagging techniques. Bagging means we have to cover the female flower so that the unwanted pollen grains never reach to the stigma. And this is given here also. If the female parent bear bisexual flower, if it is bisexual flower, then emasculation is needs, right? If it is unisexual flower, means no pollen grains, no emasculation is there, right? Bear bisexual flower, removal of anther from the flower bud before the anther dehisces using a pair of forceps. This step is called emasculation. Emasculation means what? Removal of anther, right? Emasculation means removal of anther from bisexual flower. Emasculated flowers have to be covered with bag of suitable size, right? So covered with a bag of suitable size is called bagging. Why it is important? So that to prevent contamination of its stigma with unwanted pollen, so that unwanted pollens never reach to the stigma. That's why bagging is important, right? When stigma of the bagged flower attain receptivity, mature pollen grain collected from the anthers of the male parent and are dusted on the stigma and the flower are re-bagged. Once more we have to bag them, right? And the fruit allowed to develop, right? Means now this stigma, it contains only desired pollen, right? Before bagging, then after pollination, after the pollination, we have to re-bag the female flower. If the female parent produces unisexual flower, if it is unisexual flower, that means in female plant, there is no need for emasculation because pollen grain is absent. Pollen grain is absent, no emasculation, right? The female flower bud are bagged, but we have to bag before the flower open, right? And after pollination, we have re-bagged. When the stigma becomes receptive, pollination is carried out using the desired pollen grain and flower is re-bagged. Bagged and re-bagged both times. Before pollination, after pollination. We have to bag or cover the female flower. That is artificial. That is the process of artificial hybridization. Okay. Okay, before this double fertilization, one thing is here which we need to discuss. Entry of pollen grain. Entry of pollen tube, right, into the ovule. Entry of pollen tube, we have three types. First one is, as I already tell you, it is porogamy. Porogamy means what? Pollen tube enters through micropyle. When it enters through micropyle, this is called porogamy, and it is means it is present mostly angiosperm. Mostly angiosperm, they have porogamy. Second, it is chalazogamy. When pollen tube enters through chalaza, right? That is called as chalazogamy. As I already told you, it is present in where? Casuarina. As for example here, Casuarina, or another example is Jugulans. Jugulans means what? Walnut, right? Jugulans is the scientific name. Third is it is mesogamy. Mesogamy is two types. First through integument. Through integument, as for example in Cucurbitaceae family, right? And second is through funicles. Through funicle, as for example in Populus, right? Through funicle, it is Populus. As for Populus. So these three types of that is entry of pollen tube is there, right? Orogamy is what? Look here. These are ovule. Suppose that this one is our ovule. This is micropyle. Pollen tube, it enters through micropyle. This is the pollen tube, right? Enter through micropyle. Second, it is chalazogamy, like this one. Chalazogamy means what? It is a ovule. Right? And this is the ovule. Now here what happens? This pollen tube, it enters through chalaza. This is chalaza. Right? And this is micropyle. Right? And in case of this one, mesogamy, when we consider this one, the mesogamy, we know this is the ovule. This one is ovule, right? What happens here? Sometimes through integument. This pollen tube enters through integument. This side integument. And if I said it is through funicle, look here, through this side. It is because it is a funicle, right? This side, this one is funicle, like Populus, and this is through integuments. Integument. So these are mesogamy, chalazogamy, and orogamy. You understand this one, I think. Okay. So today we finish this up to this entry of pollen tube. Next day we will complete this chapter. Okay.